The socket wrench slipped from my palm and bounced under the driver's seat. I reached beneath, and my fingers brushed something that shouldn't be there. Manila envelope, tape pulling at the foam. I pulled out the envelope. Cash. A vacuum-sealed bag of white powder. A burner phone with a cracked screen. One text on the display. Pop's truck is perfect. Cops never pull over old-timers. A delivery slip inside. My son Danny's handwriting. Please subscribe and leave a comment. What time is it right now where you are? I read every single one. The manila envelope sat on my workbench. Cash, powder, burner phone, Danny's handwriting on the delivery slip. I'd been staring at it for 20 minutes. My name is Gordon Pembroke, 62 years old. I've been fixing diesel engines since before my son learned to walk. I started Pembroke Diesel Services in 1985 with a single bay, a floor jack, and $600 in hand tools. The Army taught me how to maintain equipment under pressure and how to show up every day whether I felt like it or not. I rented a concrete box on Route 6 outside Sandusky, hung a hand-painted sign, and waited for my first customer. He came 3 days later. A Freightliner with a blown injector pump, driver named Earl who'd been stranded for 16 hours. I fixed it in 4. Earl told his dispatcher. The dispatcher told 3 fleet managers. By Christmas, I had a waiting list. I expanded twice over the next 40 years. Each time, I paid cash. No loans, no partners, no complications. The money came slow, but it came honest. Marlene and I bought the farmhouse in 1987. The year Danny was born. White clapboard, 3 acres, a wraparound porch where she'd watch the sun go down while I finished the last invoice of the day. We worked 16-hour shifts for 20 years straight. She handled the books. I handled the wrenches. Danny grew up in the shop, handing me sockets before he could read their sizes. We paid off the mortgage in 2008. Marlene cried when I showed her the cleared title. 30 years of work, 1 piece of paper. The land was ours. 2.5 years ago, she started losing weight. The doctors found the tumor 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. Pancreatic, stage 4. I closed the shop the same day. Hired a local kid to answer the phones and turn away business. For 6 months, I drove Marlene to appointments, held her hand during chemo, learned to cook the soft foods she could keep down. When the hospital said there was nothing more to do, I brought her home and set up the bed in our room where she could see her herb garden through the window. The scent of basil drifting through on warm afternoons. She died on a Tuesday morning in April. I was holding her hand when she stopped breathing. After the funeral, I went back to work. What else was there? The shop needed me. The customers needed me. The silence in that farmhouse was louder than any diesel engine I'd ever heard. I kept her journals going. 17 leather-bound volumes now, each one documenting every vehicle I've ever touched. Make, model, year, owner's name, what was wrong, how I fixed it, whether they paid on time. A rough diagram of Earl's injector pump in Volume 1. The bolt pattern I'd improvised. I can still see his face when I flip to that page. Every entry represents someone who brought me their problem and believed I'd solve it right. Fleet managers across northern Ohio call me before they call the dealerships. Police officers wave when they see my truck. My handshake closes more deals than any contract. In 2019, the County Sheriff's Department hosted a DEA seminar on drug trafficking in commercial vehicles. They invited local mechanics because we're the ones who might spot modifications. I went on a slow Tuesday, more curious than concerned. The instructor spent 2 hours on trap compartments, cartel-grade installations. His exact words: hydraulic mechanisms hidden behind panels, lead-lined walls to defeat X-ray inspection, activation sequences that required specific combinations of brake pedals and turn signals. I took notes, drew diagrams, asked questions about the hydraulic systems, because that's how my mind works. The instructor seemed pleased that someone was paying attention. I never imagined I'd use that knowledge on my own truck. But sitting in my shop at midnight, staring at the envelope I'd pulled from beneath my rear seat, the diagrams came back. Every step. Parking brake up, left signal 3 times, right signal twice, brake pedal held 5 seconds. Marlene used to say, trust is like a crankshaft. You can machine it back once, maybe twice. After that, the metal's too thin to hold. I looked at Danny's handwriting on the delivery slip. Then I reached for volume 17 and flipped to last month's entries. My truck's mileage logged every night I parked it at the shop. The numbers didn't match what I'd assumed were routine trips. They didn't match at all. The numbers told the story. Danny never needed to open his mouth. I spread volume 17 across my workbench, the lead lamp casting hard light on 3 months of entries. Every night I parked the truck at the shop. I logged the odometer. Habit. 40 years of tracking customer vehicles had made it automatic. I ran my finger down the column. May 14th. Danny borrowed the truck for a meeting in Fremont. Fremont is 42 miles round trip. Odometer showed 223 miles, added. May 28th. Parts pickup in Norwalk. 60 miles round trip. Odometer read 184 miles higher. June 3rd. Visiting a buddy in Bellevue. 30 miles. The truck came back with 201 additional miles. 8 months of entries. Every single one showed the same pattern. Whatever Danny was doing, he was driving between 80 and 220 miles each time. The destinations he claimed were never more than 60 miles round trip. I closed the journal. The envelope still sat on my workbench. The cash, the powder, the burner phone with Danny's delivery instructions. The numbers didn't lie. Danny did. He scraped through high school with C's while I rebuilt transmissions from memory. He bounced between sales jobs while I expanded the shop twice. He talked about getting his MBA for 6 years, never filled out an application. I rebuilt transmissions from memory while he scraped through algebra. The gap never closed. 3 years ago, I noticed the sports betting, games, playing on his phone during dinner. His eyes tracking scores instead of conversation. I asked him about it once. It's nothing, Dad. Just something to keep things interesting. I've got a system. Marlene was dying. I had bigger concerns than Danny's hobbies. Now I understood what that system had cost him. The Sunday after I found the envelope, I invited Danny and his family for dinner. Sophie, my 7-year-old granddaughter, ran to hug me when they arrived. She had Marlene's eyes, the same shade of brown that had watched me from across the breakfast table for 35 years. Danny came in behind her, that too quick smile already in place. Full tank when I bring it back, Dad. Thanks for letting me borrow it again. We sat at the kitchen table. Marlene's chair stayed empty. I'd roasted a chicken the way she taught me, and Sophie chattered about her school play while Danny's attention drifted to his phone beneath the table. "How's work?" I asked him. His thumb twitched over the screen. "Great. Really great. Big quarter coming up." "What supplier did you see in Toledo last Tuesday?" The twitch at the corner of his mouth, the slight rise in his voice. "Oh, that fell through. Ended up driving around, clearing my head. Brood, you know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. Toledo was 90 miles round trip. His errand had added 200 miles to my odometer. "Must have done a lot of thinking," I said. Sophie asked for more mashed potatoes. Danny seized the interruption, launching into a story about her dance recital. His voice pitched higher than the story warranted. His laugh arrived before the punchline. After they left, I sat on the porch with Marlene's wedding ring in my palm. The gold caught the porch light. I went inside and opened volume 17 to a fresh page. Wrote the date. Wrote the mileage discrepancy. Wrote Danny's exact words. Ended up driving around, clearing my head. Then I added 2 more. He's lying. I set down the pen and looked at the envelope on my workbench. The cash, the powder, the burner phone. Tomorrow I'd search the truck properly. Find the compartment my son had installed while I was busy grieving his mother. The following Tuesday, Danny brought the truck back at 9:15. Full tank, keys on my kitchen counter, that too quick smile already fading as he walked to his Lexus. "Thanks, Dad. Saved me a trip to the rental place." I watched his taillights disappear down the county road. Then I checked the odometer. 207 miles added. His errand had supposedly been in Fremont. 42 miles round trip. I drove the truck to the shop. The parking lot was empty. I pulled into Bay 2, killed the engine, and sat in the darkness for a long moment. The smell of diesel oil and degreaser. 40 years of honest work soaked into these concrete floors. I pulled on latex gloves from the supply cabinet. Blue nitrile, the same kind I used when handling brake fluid or battery acid. Evidence handling. The thought came automatic, like checking torque specs. The envelope I'd found taped under the seat had shown me the surface. Tonight, I'd find the source. The DEA seminar had covered activation sequences in detail. Cartel-grade compartments required specific combinations to prevent accidental discovery. The instructor had demonstrated on a seized vehicle, a Silverado with Texas plates. I started with the parking brake. Pulled it up. The click echoed in the empty bay. Left turn signal. 3 times. The relay ticked, sharp in the silence. Right turn signal, twice. Brake pedal. I pressed it down and held. 5 seconds. 6, 7. A hydraulic click sounded behind the rear seat. The cushion shifted a 1/4 inch. Something mechanical releasing. I released the brake and climbed out. The rear door opened smooth on its hinges. I pulled the seat forward. A panel had separated from the wall, maybe 6 inches of gap. I reached in and found a handle recessed into the panel's edge. The compartment opened, 6 inches wide, lead-lined walls catching the work lamp. I recognized the gray sheen from the seminar slides. X-ray defeat installation. Professional work. Someone had spent real money on this. Inside, more bundled cash than the envelope had held, maybe 3 inches thick. Another vacuum-sealed bag of white powder, larger than the first. And a second burner phone, this one with a cracked screen. Pray, I photographed the cash first, counted $18,000 in hundreds and fifties, rubber-banded in stacks of 2,000 each. The powder I didn't touch beyond documenting its position. Off-white, crystalline. Could be fentanyl, based on the vacuum seal and quantity. Enough to kill a town if someone stepped on it wrong. The phone powered on when I pressed the side button. No lock screen. Danny had gotten careless, or he never expected anyone to find it. 8 months of text messages. 43 separate conversations. Over 200 individual exchanges. I photographed each one. Screen after screen, the flash from my phone illuminating the cab in white bursts. Names I didn't recognize. Addresses in Toledo, Cleveland, Detroit. Pickup times, drop locations, payment confirmations. One thread stood out. Contact name, Javier. The message read, Pop's truck is perfect. Cops never pull over old-timers. The same words from the envelope. I glimpsed them once. Now I was seeing the full conversation. I scrolled down. Danny's reply, he has no idea. The old man thinks I'm running errands. The old man. I read it 3 times. Each time the words meant the same thing. He has no idea. I closed the phone. Replaced it in the compartment. Closed the panel. Pushed the seat back into position. Then I sat in the driver's seat and pulled Marlene's wedding ring from my pocket. The gold caught the work lamp's light. Simple band, small diamond. She'd never wanted an upgrade. This is the one you gave me, she'd say. Why would I want a different one? Her voice came back to me. That morning in the shop, 4 months before the diagnosis, when I'd told her about a customer who'd tried to pass a bad check. Trust is like a crankshaft, Gordon. You can machine it back once, maybe twice. But after that, the metal's too thin to hold. I held her ring for an hour. Maybe longer. The shop stayed silent around me. Danny had installed a drug compartment in my truck. Used my reputation as cover. Owls laughed about it in text messages. The old man thinks I'm running errands. Something locked into place. Not rage, something quieter, more deliberate. I looked at the odometer one more time. Then I put the ring back in my pocket and started the truck. The engine turned over smooth, the way it always did. 40 years of maintenance. 40 years of honest work. I drove home and made a list. First item, James Crawford, attorney. Marlene's Accord started on the first turn, the way it always did. I'd kept the maintenance current for 2 years without driving it more than 300 miles. Her perfume clung to the headrest. 2 years and 300 miles hadn't cleared it. Neither had the antiseptic smell from her final months. Hand sanitizer. Hospice protocols. I sat with it for a moment before backing out of the garage. Danny had borrowed my truck again that Tuesday. Quick trip to Cleveland, he'd said. Meeting a client about fleet maintenance contracts. The odometer would tell me the truth when he returned it. I didn't need to wait. Route 412 runs through flat farmland between Sandusky and Toledo. No streetlights, no state patrol after dark. I caught Danny's Lexus in my headlights 3 miles past the county line. Silver paint flashed, then disappeared as I dropped back. I kept a quarter mile between us. The Accord was invisible out here, just another set of headlights on a rural highway. He drove for 90 minutes, past Toledo, past the exits I knew, into a warehouse district south of Detroit I'd never seen before. Sodium lights cast orange pools across loading docks. Somewhere distant, metal clanged against metal. I pulled into a truck stop a mile back and watched his taillights disappear between corrugated steel buildings. 20 minutes later, he came back out. Drove past me without slowing. I let him get ahead before following him home. The next morning, I returned to the photographs I'd taken of the burner phone. 43 conversations. Over 200 messages. I needed to understand the full scope of what Danny had gotten himself into. One name appeared more than any other. Javier. I typed it into the search bar along with the area code from his number. Texas, Houston area. The results gave me nothing useful. But the text told me enough. The thread went back 8 months. Danny's first message. I need more time. The debt is killing me. Javier's reply. You're already 3 weeks late. We bought your paper from Cleveland. $47K with interest. You want to work it off, or you want us to collect? I scrolled through the math. Danny's original gambling debt had been $8,000. A Cleveland sportsbook had sold it to Javier's crew. The cartel had added interest, fees, penalties. $47,000. Compounding weekly. Danny's payment plan. 20 deliveries at $2,000 each. $40,000 total. But the interest kept running. The math was simple. At $2,000 per run, Danny would need another 40 deliveries just to clear the interest. By then, the principal would have doubled again. I opened a calculator and ran the figures on the fentanyl I'd photographed. Street value per gram. Quantity in the vacuum-sealed bag. Conservative estimates, $45,000. Enough to kill 600 people if someone cut it wrong. The texts mentioned 20 completed runs. If each carried similar weight, my son had transported enough poison to wipe out a small town. I closed the calculator, opened a new browser tab, typed DEA Anonymous tip line, Ohio. The number appeared on the first result. I wrote it on a notepad beside Marlene's photo. The paper sat there while I stared at it. The number sat on the notepad next to Marlene's photo. I looked at both for a long time. Proved. I didn't call. Instead, I drove to Willow Creek Estates. Danny's house looked the same as the others. 4 bedrooms, 2-car garage, lawn service keeping the grass at regulation height. The mortgage was more than he could afford. I'd helped with the down payment 3 years ago. I parked across the street and killed the engine. Sophie's face appeared in the living room window. My granddaughter, pressing her palm against the glass. She waved at the unfamiliar car the way she waved at everyone. Marlene's eyes looking out at me from a face that hadn't learned yet how the world could break. The light behind her showed the living room where Danny watched his games, the kitchen where Kristen cooked on her rare week's home, the hallway leading to Sophie's bedroom with the purple walls she'd picked herself. This was the house my granddaughter would grow up in, connected to cartels, built on drug money, one missed payment away from whatever Javier's crew did to runners who couldn't deliver. I sat in Marlene's car. Protect Danny, and Sophie stays in this house, in this life, with these people circling her father like wolves. Turn him in, and I become her guardian. The farmhouse, the shop. A childhood without cartel, debts hanging over every birthday. Sophie pressed her palm flat against the glass, waiting for me to wave back. I didn't. The tip line number waited on my desk at home. I drove back in silence, Marlene's perfume filling the car. The metal's too thin to hold. The latex gloves snapped against my wrists. Blue nitrile, the same kind I'd used for 40 years handling brake fluid and battery acid. I opened the trap compartment again. Parking brake up. Left signal 3 times. Right signal twice. Brake pedal held 5 seconds. The hydraulic click sounded behind the rear seat. The envelope, the cash. The vacuum-sealed bag of white powder. The burner phone with the cracked screen. I photographed each item in position. Then I placed them in a canvas tool bag from the shop. Photographed the empty compartment. Closed the panel. The compartment sealed with the same mechanical precision it had opened. Marlene's Accord waited in the garage. Her perfume still clung to the headrest. I set the tool bag on the passenger seat and backed out onto the county road. The clock on the dash read 9:47 p.m. Danny was at Callahan's Sports Bar. Tuesday night meant dollar drafts and whatever game had the biggest spread. His buddy always drove on game nights. He'd be there until closing. His wife Kristen's rotation had her in Indianapolis for another 12 days. I drove the back roads to Willow Creek Estates. No traffic, no witnesses. The streetlights in Danny's subdivision cast orange pools across identical lawns. His Lexus sat in the driveway. The garage door was down. Sophie's bedroom window was dark. She was at the Hendersons tonight. Sleepover. Danny had mentioned it Sunday. I parked 3 houses down and cut the engine. The spare key was on my keyring. Danny had given it to me when they bought the house. In case of emergency, Dad. I'd helped with the down payment. $20,000 from the account Marlene and I had built together. He never changed the locks. The front door opened without sound. I closed it behind me and stood in the dark entryway. Strawberry shampoo, pizza grease. The house still held Sophie's presence. His Lexus keys hung on the hook by the garage door. I pressed the unlock button. The car chirped once. The garage stayed dark as I opened the driver's door. The glove compartment opened with a click. Owner's manual, registration, insurance cards. I placed the envelope behind them. Cash and powder, visible if anyone looked. The burner phone went under the driver's seat, far enough back that Danny wouldn't notice until the search. I photographed everything. The glove compartment, the phone's position, the timestamp on my screen, 10:23 p.m., Tuesday, June 18th. The Lexus door closed with a soft thunk. I relocked it from inside the house, hung the keys back on their hook. 3 minutes later, I was driving toward Route 6. The gas station payphone stood at the edge of the parking lot. Fluorescent lights hummed above the empty lot. I'd seen this phone 1,000 times, never used it once. The receiver was cold against my ear. The DEA tip line connected on the second ring. A woman answered, professional. Alert. I want to report drug trafficking, I said. Vehicle has a trap compartment. Cartel-grade installation. Go ahead, she said. I gave her the activation sequence. Parking brake, signals, brake pedal. I gave her Danny's address. The Lexus description. Silver, 2021, Ohio plates. The compartment is lead-lined, I said, designed to defeat X-ray. The drugs are connected to someone named Javier. Texas area code. I have the number. Hold on. Her voice sharpened. This is Detective Rosa Fuentes. I'm transferring you to my direct line. I waited, heard her typing, heard her breathing change. That activation sequence you're describing, she said. We've been tracking that pattern for 18 months. It's connected to a network-running product from Houston through the Midwest. I know, I said. How do you know? I'm the one whose truck they were using. She was quiet for a moment. Then give me everything. I gave her the text messages first, then the delivery routes, the $47,000 debt, Javier's name and number, Danny's schedule. The call lasted 11 minutes. I hung up, checked my watch. 11 minutes. I drove home. I made coffee, sat on the porch in Marlene's chair. The road toward Toledo stretched into darkness. No headlights, no movement, just the coffee steam rising and the night settling around the farmhouse where I'd raised my son. 20 minutes later, the flash of police lights appeared on the horizon, red and blue cutting through the black, heading toward Willow Creek Estates. I watched them until they disappeared. Then I finished my coffee. The mug was cold. I went inside. The police lights reached Danny's driveway at 10:47 p.m. I know because I was still on the porch, watching the road toward Willow Creek Estates. I didn't drive over, didn't call, just sat in Marlene's chair and waited for news I already knew was coming. The next morning, a deputy I'd known for 30 years stopped by the shop. Thought you'd want to hear it from someone you know, Gordon. Your son got arrested last night. Drug charges. Federal. I thanked him, went back to the transmission I was rebuilding. The details came in pieces over the next 2 days. Danny had been handcuffed in his driveway. My granddaughter Sophie had been watching through the living room window. The Hendersons had kept her overnight until Child Protective Services arrived the next morning. Danny's wife, Kristen, flew back from Indianapolis 12 hours after the arrest. She walked into a house already being inventoried for asset forfeiture. Her husband was in federal custody. Her daughter was with CPS. Everything she thought she knew about her life was wrong. 3 days after the arrest, a woman walked into Pembroke Diesel Services. Mid-40s, calloused hands. The kind you got from physical work, not paperwork. Mr. Pembroke, I'm Detective Rosa Fuentes, DEA Task Force. You called our tip line Tuesday night. I wiped my hands on a shop rag. Detective, she looked around the bay. 3 lifts. Tool chests older than my son. The smell of diesel and degreaser soaked into 40 years of concrete. My father ran a body shop in Toledo, she said, nodding at the floor, Jack near the door. Same model he used. I nodded toward my office. Coffee? We sat across my desk. Marlene's photo watched from its spot near the lamp. The same desk where I'd written 17 volumes of maintenance logs. The same desk where I'd calculated how many people Danny's deliveries could have killed. After your call, we obtained search warrants for both vehicles, Fuentes said. The trap compartment in your truck held enough fentanyl to trigger federal charges. Combined with the evidence in the Lexus, we had what we needed. 21 U.S.S.C. Section 841, I said. Mandatory minimum. She raised an eyebrow. You know the statute? I did my research before I called. She set down her coffee cup. Your son's cooperating. Full disclosure on Javier Estrada's network. Names, routes, payment structures. His testimony will help us dismantle the Texas connection. Good, I said. There's something else you should know. I waited. We've been tracking Estrada's operation for 18 months. His runners have a shelf life. Once they've made enough deliveries to know the network, they become liabilities. I looked at Marlene's photo. Her smile, her kind eyes, the same eyes Sophie had inherited. Your son was 3 weeks from being retired, Fuente said. Permanently. We found communications discussing it. The only reason he's alive is because you called that tip line when you did. My hand moved to my pocket. Found Marlene's ring. You saved his life, Mr. Pembroke. He'll never know it. He'll spend the next decade in federal prison thinking you destroyed him. But you saved his life. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Fuentes stood, left her card on the desk. If you need anything during the proceedings, call me directly. She paused at the door. What you did took a different kind of courage than most people have. I've seen families cover for worse. Seen grandchildren grow up in cartel households. You broke that cycle. She left. I sat in the silence of my shop for a long time. Then I picked up the transmission I'd been rebuilding and went back to work. The guardianship paperwork took 2 weeks. Emergency petition filed the day after the arrest. Character references from every fleet manager in northern Ohio. Financial statements showing the farmhouse paid off, the shop paid off, retirement accounts totaling $540,000. Sophie's caseworker was a woman named Patricia Chen, early 40s, efficient, clipboard in hand. She visited the farmhouse twice, walked through every room, checked the windows, the stairs, the kitchen appliances, asked about my health, my schedule, my support network. The second visit, she sat on the porch with me. "Your granddaughter asks about her father every day," she said. "I know. What do you tell her?" "That he made some bad choices, that he's going to be gone for a while, that none of it is her fault." Patricia wrote something in her notebook. The court date is next Thursday. The judge approved the guardianship after a 30-minute hearing. Spotless record, financial stability, family connection. Sophie sat beside me in the courtroom, her hand gripping mine when the gavel came down. Afterward, we drove to the farmhouse. Her suitcase was in the trunk. Purple. She'd covered it with horse stickers herself, each one placed with 7-year-old precision. She looked out the window at the fields passing by. "Grandpa, is Daddy ever coming home?" "Someday," I said. She was quiet for a mile. "Then, can I see Grandma's garden?" We stood together in the overgrown herb bed behind the house. The soil was dry beneath our feet. Basil, gone to seed, rosemary spreading wild. The lavender Marlene had planted the year Sophie was born. Sophie picked a sprig of lavender and held it to her nose. "It smells like her," she said. I put my hand on her shoulder. Marlene's eyes looked up at me from my granddaughter's face. The metal was thin, but it held. My story hitting different? Tap like and rate it from 1 to 10. Explain your score below. Thank you. 6 months later, Sophie slept in the room I couldn't enter for 2 years. I'd painted the walls the soft purple she'd chosen, hung curtains with horses on them, set up the bed where Marlene's hospital equipment once stood. The oxygen tank, the IV pole, the monitors that beeped through those final weeks. All gone now, replaced by a 7-year-old's drawings taped to the walls and a stuffed rabbit Sophie named Chester that she couldn't sleep without. The shop closed at 2:30 now. I picked Sophie up from school at 3. We'd drive back together, her telling me about how Marcus Chen got sent to the principal's office for putting a frog in the teacher's desk, or how she finally beat everyone at multiplication flashcards. Last week, I taught her to identify a Cummins diesel by sound alone. She got it on the 3rd try. Sophie's eyes lit up when I told her she was right. Marlene's eyes. Danny's letters sat unopened in my desk drawer. 4 of them now, stacked in order of arrival, edges sharp, envelopes gathering dust. Federal prison return address. His handwriting on each one. Maybe someday I'd read them. Kristen came on weekends. She'd sit with Sophie in the garden, pulling weeds from Marlene's herb bed, grateful, her word, not mine, for stepping in. I sat on the porch that evening, Sophie asleep upstairs, and held Marlene's wedding ring. The gold caught the last light. Trust is like a crankshaft. Machine it back too many times, and the metal fails. But sometimes what remains is enough.